Deadly Premonition is an open-world survival horror game in the vein of Twin Peaks, where FBI agent Francis York Morgan travels to the quiet countryside town of Greenvale to investigate a recent murder. Atmosphere. There isn't anything quite like Deadly Premonition. Its level of surreal weirdness makes the story hard to follow and the events are nearly impossible to predict. Characters have strange mannerisms and do weird things. Settings change from light to dark like the Otherworld in Silent Hill. The tone changes in an instant. Comedy turns to horror, back to comedy again. It shares with you glimpses of unparalleled beauty in the most deepest and darkest recesses of the characters' minds and desires, sharing personal information of pasts no one should ever have had to have. Its soundtrack pulses with cheer and despair in equal amounts. The criminal profiling where you gather evidence and try to piece together what happened by viewing distorted snippets of disturbing events is fantastically unsettling. The darker side of Deadly Premonition is a nauseating miasma of confusing events. The enemies bend over backwards and have blacked out eyes and mouths like they're smiling at you, as their slowed down voices say that they don't want to die. It's so uniquely weird and disturbing. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. Whilst the game is deeply unsettling, there are only a few moments in which I was truly scared. Some of them were jump scares which I failed to see coming, and others were numerous quick-time events against the primary antagonist, the Raincoat Killer. Hiding from him in cupboards in the brief sections of the game in which you do were incredibly tense, as the game mechanics seem to act contrary to what you press. I'm prompted to hold down a button to hold my breath, and York loudly exhales, which then scares me, thinking I'm going to get caught by the Raincoat Killer, but he keeps on walking and searching as though he didn't even hear it. Really though, it's the shocking, gory murders themselves that stand tall amongst everything else that happens in the game. Deadly Premonition doesn't scare the player as much as scar them. That's still one Harry Mason. Sound design. The music in this game reaches from incredibly beautiful and magical down to dark and disturbing. Whilst there are only a few pieces of music that repeat throughout this fairly lengthy game, I never found it any less enchanting when certain pieces of music wound up. In the final acts of the game, it showers you in a rendition of Amazing Grace as the Raincoat Killer stalks the town and plays the title music as you chase the ghost of Anna through a rainy Greenvale. It's a perfect application of music. The sound effects are all mysterious and weird. The voices that the enemies make are all distorted and slowed down, and they moan creepy phrases as you're forced to gun them down. That's two Harry Masons. Gore. This easily has some of the most disturbing gore scenes in any game, with plants growing from people's stomach, people having their tongue cut out and throwing up blood and seeds they've been forced to eat, people strung up and hanging in place by wires, people crushed, scars ripping open. When the enemies catch you, sometimes they force their hand into your mouth, and there's so many weird things that are just so wrong and nasty in this game. It's true shock value, which is rare. That's three Harry Masons. Story. Agent Francis York Morgan comes to the town of Greenvale to solve the mystery of the murder of a teenage girl called Anna. The story takes twists and turns and never lets you have a moment's peace. Whether it's building up characters' pasts, unveiling disturbing events, or making you sympathize with previously harsh townsfolk, it keeps you guessing what's going to happen next. As stated before, the game's ability to share its surreal weirdness, beauty, and dark depravity with you is its strongest feature, making the final score 4 out of 5 Harry Masons. Deadly Premonition might be one of my favourite games ever made. While the tone changes constantly and some events are never explained, it stands as an example of a cluster of things that shouldn't work coming together and making an unforgettable experience for better or worse. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I was absolutely freaked out during certain scenes, I did not scream like a banshee or run away from the computer, and I advise you don't either. There'll be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching, and always go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.